Hi, I'm Sonona Kuhn, and this is my lifespan timeline presentation. So, first, a little introduction about me. I've lived most of my life in Michigan. I grew up in Michigan. When I was 3 years old, so about a toddler, I lived in Chicago for 2 years, and then when I was around 10 years old in fifth grade, I lived in Missouri for a year. And both times were for my dad's job, so we just went for 1, 2 years and then moved back to our same house in Michigan. So for most of my life, I've been raised in Michigan. I'm from Livonia, a little bit outside of Detroit. It's a suburb of Detroit. It's about 20 minutes outside. And then there's a picture of me as a baby, and then a picture of me and my cousins when I was younger, and then the third picture is me and my family, probably when I think I was about 14 there. I have an older brother who's a year older than me, and then a younger brother who's 3 years younger than me. And then the last picture was from my freshman year of college. My freshman year of college, I went down to Georgia and I played beach volleyball. I played at Mercer University, which is about an hour south of Atlanta. And then while I was down there my freshman year, I had an injury that unfortunately caused me to move home back to Michigan for my recovery. So then after moving home, I decided to stay home, and I stayed home for the next 2 years. And I played volleyball at Schoolcraft Community College, which is in my hometown. It's in Livonia, so it was right in my backyard. And then after playing there for 2 years, I decided to transfer here to Saginaw. So I've been here for the last year, and I have one more year of eligibility left here at Saginaw. So starting with my infancy, my reflexes, and voluntary movement. When I was an infant, my mom said she remembers me being pretty active. She said I had all the typical reflexes that an infant has, but these were the most notable ones that she remembered. So sucking is an infant reflex that typically occurs around 3 to 4 months. Well, until 3 to 4 months. And my mom said that she remembered me starting around 1 month, kind of when you're an infant, looking for food and that type of thing. She remembers me whenever I was hungry, sucking on pacifiers, toys, really anything within reach. She said I had this one giraffe toy that was my favorite. And then another reflex that my mom mentioned was the swimming reflex. And this typically occurs until about 6 months of age. And it's when the baby's on its stomach and they move their arms kind of in like a doggy paddle motion. So it kind of looks like they're swimming. And my mom said that she remembers me starting this around 2 months, kind of like the precursor to crawling, just moving your arms. And my mom was a swimmer. She swam in college, so this really pushed her to believe that I'd become her swimmer in the family. And then another reflex that I showed pretty early was the search reflex, the root reflex, which typically occurs until about 3 to 4 months. And I was pretty young with this one too at first. My mom said at 1 month, I showed this reflex, searching for things, searching for food, turning my head and stuff. So this was one of my most prominent reflexes that my mom said she remembered. And then looking at my voluntary movements, again, my mom said I had all the typical voluntary infant movements, pretty typical ages with standing, sitting, stepping, all that. Sitting typically occurs around 6 months, and I was sitting around 5 months. My mom said prior to that, I could sit in like those little rubber baby chairs that they have that you put the baby in with the back support to help them learn how to sit up and develop those muscles. And then around 5 months, I was strong enough to sit up on my own without the support. And then another voluntary movement is crawling, which typically occurs around 10 months. And I started crawling around 9 months, my mom said, and as all babies do, I crawled everywhere. I'd be in the living room, and she said she'd turn her back for a second, and then I'm behind the couch or halfway across the room, just don't stay still. So I had to be put in the little baby corral a lot. And then another voluntary movement I had was walking, which is typically around 12 months. I started walking at 11 months. Prior to walking, my parents said that I could pull myself up and like a couch or a chair or something to stand and kind of take a step, but I didn't really have the strength to fully walk. So between like 10 and 11 months, I developed that strength from standing up to having the balance to actually walk. Looking at my childhood and my foundational and specialized skills, my foundational skills are pretty athlete based, I think pretty sport athletic based, because I was raised in a family of athletes. My mom played volleyball and she swam. She did both in high school, and then she swam in college at the University of Iowa and eventually went to the Olympic trials with her swimming for backstroke. And then my dad's main sports were volleyball and soccer. So growing up, I learned to throw from a very young age. From birth in my family, pretty much handed a basketball, a soccer ball, all types of little baby toys to teach us how to throw and initiate sports and that type of movement and skills early. So I could throw from a young age, not very well, but I could throw from around 4 years old. And then kicking took a little more time and a little more coordination. I was great with catching and throwing things that were kind of given to me easy, but kicking really didn't mature until I started playing soccer at 6 years old. And I was heavily against this. I did not want to play soccer, but my mom wanted to catch up in that coordination with my feet, so that I could really be well-rounded. So my kicking really matured around 6 years old. And then running was another one where I matured pretty quickly. Having an older brother and a lot of older cousins in the family, constantly trying to keep up with them, even from a young age. You know, when you're a kid, you want to keep up with your older siblings, your older family members, and do what they're doing. So I developed running skills at a pretty young age, and just being in a family of athletes too, we played sports and I grew up learning these skills. Specialized skills, throughout childhood, I played pretty much not every sport out there, but most of them: basketball, soccer, softball, swimming, cheer, dance, pom, a little bit of everything, volleyball. The first specialized skill that I learned was swimming. I learned how to swim at 3 years old from a very young age, having a collegiate swimmer as your mom who also went to the Olympic trials. She's going to make sure that you know how to swim and that you're not going to drown from a young age. So I had to learn swimming from a young age, and then I swam competitively every summer from 5 to 12 years old. I wasn't too on board with this, but I swam for our swim club in the summer, and that was a lot of serial practice and repetitive practice and building on skills from 5 to 12 years old. And then I started playing volleyball when I was 8 years old. This was the first sport that I really fell in love with. When you're in the elementary age, you still don't really have the coordination for a lot of things. But I think learning sports at such a young age is good because it develops that muscle memory. And I remember leaving my first volleyball camp and getting in the car with my mom and saying, this is it. Like, this is the sport I actually like. Hated soccer, hated basketball, too much running. But volleyball was it, and that one worked out because both my parents were my coaches growing up, and I still play volleyball at the collegiate level. And my last main sport and specialized skill was track and cross country. So I started running track and cross country at about 12 years old. I ran throughout middle school until my sophomore year of high school, and I was a distance runner. So in track, I did high jump, 400, 800, mile, and then cross country, of course, is the 5K. And then other specialized skills, I'd say I had the basic specialized skills of kids my age: riding a bike, jumping, playing backyard games, wiffle ball, and such. Next, looking at adulthood and my milestones and goals. Volleyball is a big milestone and goal for me. At one point, the plan was to play beach volleyball throughout my college career and keep training that until I got to the pro track and the tournaments, but life took me another way. So I currently have 1 year of collegiate eligibility left, and I play in a lot of adult leagues and tournaments around the year whenever I can. As soon as I'm out of season, I try to play as much as I can every week, and I plan to be in and around the sport for the rest of my life, which ties into my future career goals. I plan to become an athletic trainer, and out of college, I hope to athletic train for AAU travel tournaments around the country. So I grew up playing club volleyball and being in a different state every weekend, and that's kind of how I want to get to travel, is going to these big volleyball or basketball or amateur tournaments and athletic training. And it'll help keep me around not just the sport of volleyball, but all sports. And then in my future, I would eventually like to travel internationally. I'm not sure if I'd like to do that before I get into my job after college, or a job first and then try to travel. But after traveling, I could see myself moving back to Georgia. I definitely like the warm weather. I want to end up somewhere down south, so Georgia would be great. I had a great time when I was there. And eventually starting a family and raising my kids as athletes. I genuinely love my life growing up as an athlete, and I think that sports could provide a lot of pressure, but I think it also helped me to develop through infancy, childhood, and adulthood. So throughout infancy, I developed at a normal rate, had all the normal skills and tendencies for a child my age. And in childhood, I learned multiple sports. And adulthood, I hope that my active lifestyle will help me to live the long life and achieve the goals that I have.